Henry Kissinger, Rajiv Gandhi, JRD Tata, and Eveready batteries. What is the link between these four things? The answer will shock you. It's the Bhopal Gas Tragedy. This week marks 39 years of the gigantic corporate crime that jolted Bharat in 1984. This report is not a usual flashback to the dark chapter. It goes deeper. It's about the shocking role of Kissinger, Rajiv Gandhi, JRD Tata, and Eveready Company in the tragedy. Thanks for tuning in. This is Nadim, you're watching Empire Diaries. Let's try putting the pieces of the puzzle together. It will help you understand why all the high profile culprits got away scot free. First, let's do a quick recap of the events. Late on 2nd December 1984, shortly after midnight, there was a major malfunction in a chemical tank at a pesticide plant. The factory was located in a densely populated part of Bhopal. A poisonous gas called methyl isocyanate or MIC started gushing out into the air for 2 hours. The dangerous gas was made up of MIC, chloroform and other chemicals. 40 tons of toxic gas fanned out of the factory and quickly spread out in a 7-kilometer radius. Overnight, 3 to 4,000 people choked to death after inhaling it. Within 3 days, almost 7,000 bodies were lying around. 39 years later, some estimates are saying the death toll could be 30,000. It includes deaths from the immediate impact and delayed effect of the poisonous gas. So who owned the poorly maintained pesticide plant? A company called Union Carbide India Limited or UCIL. This UCIL was a subsidiary of its parent company Union Carbide Corporation. Union Carbide is a notorious American chemical company. Why notorious? Much before the Bhopal disaster, Union Carbide already had a history of accidents and health hazards. So at the time of the Bhopal episode, US-based Union Carbide had a 50.9% stake in UCIL, its Indian subsidiary. Union Carbide still operates freely from its head office in Texas. In 2001, 17 years after the Bhopal crisis, another US chemical company called Dow Chemical took over Union Carbide. So Union Carbide is today a subsidiary of Dow Chemical. Let's now look at UCIL, Union Carbide's Indian subsidiary at that time. UCIL physically operated the controversial pesticide factory in Bhopal. Now UCIL was not a new company that Union Carbide created. It has a long history. UCIL has been around since 1905 under different names. First it was National Carbon, making batteries and industrial products. Then it became Eveready Company. Later in 1951, US-based Union Carbide took over and turned it into a subsidiary. So as a subsidiary, Eveready was renamed UCIL. In 1995, 11 years after the Bhopal tragedy, Union Carbide sold its 50.9% stake in UCIL to an Indian company called McLeod Russell. Now McLeod Russell is a tea company that was part of the Williamson Magar Group in Kolkata. So McLeod Russell, after taking over UCIL, again renamed it as Eveready Industries India Limited. The Eveready batteries you get in your shops in your area are manufactured by Eveready Industries. Most people don't know that this Eveready is the same company that ran the Bhopal tragedy's pesticide factory. Eveready doesn't operate the factory site anymore. Soon after the tragedy, the lease was cancelled by the Madhya Pradesh government. In short, UCIL was in charge of the factory in 1984. It was owned by the US-based Union Carbide. After the disaster, UCIL's lease for the factory site was cancelled. Later, Union Carbide sold off UCIL and UCIL became Eveready. Also, Dow Chemical took over Union Carbide. This short history is important to know because they are all passing the buck right now. None of them wants to own up to the corporate crime. They have all given various explanations. UCIL no longer exists under the name. It's now Eveready. So Eveready says, why are we being blamed after so many years? We are not UCIL anymore. We don't control the factory site either. Our lease and license were cancelled long back. Why don't you catch US-based Union Carbide? They owned UCIL at that time. Now Union Carbide says, we are not at fault. We are only the parent company of UCIL. It was UCIL that was physically running the factory. Why don't you go catch them? Besides, we are now owned by Dow Chemical, so talk to Dow Chemical. Now Dow Chemical says, why are we being targeted? We had no connection with Union Carbide and UCIL in 1984. We purchased Union Carbide in 2001, 17 years after the tragedy. Why catch us? Go and catch UCIL. So everybody is passing the parcel around. The action that was taken was way too light for a disaster of this magnitude. Union Carbide happily decided to pay only $470 million as compensation to the victims' families and for medical facilities for further treatment. It's far less than the $3.3 billion the Indian government originally demanded from them. Even worse, 7 ground level UCIL employees were convicted for negligence of duty that night. They were released on bail soon after the verdict. The biggest name that escaped was that of Warren Anderson, CEO and chairman of US based Union Carbide at that time. 4 days after the gas leak, Anderson flew down to Madhya Pradesh from the US. He was immediately arrested and taken into custody on orders from the Madhya Pradesh government. But a few hours later, he was released. He happily dashed off to the airport, boarded a plane, and fled from the country. The Indian courts later tried their best but could never drag him back to Indian territory again for a trial. It is well known since 1984 that PM Rajiv Gandhi intervened and saved Anderson. He ordered the Madhya Pradesh government under Arjun Singh to ensure that Anderson is safely escorted out of the country. The assumption since then is that the US government, which is a global bully, pulled all the strings. Washington would have ordered Rajiv Gandhi to arrange Anderson's great escape. It is an insult to this country that Anderson spent his final years in peace in the beautiful elite town of Vero Beach in Florida. He died of old age at 92 in 2014, almost 30 years after the Bhopal disaster. The corporate criminal walked away without a scratch. Talking about Rajiv Gandhi's role in protecting the Union Carbide CEO, here is another outrageous fact that you should never forget. Not just Rajiv Gandhi alone, Indian corporate rock star JRD Tata also acted as an agent for the US company in the Bhopal case. There is evidence in the form of a letter that JRD Tata was lobbying on behalf of Union Carbide and Henry Kissinger. Now, why Henry Kissinger? What did he have to do with the Bhopal case? Union Carbide had hired Kissinger's consulting firm, Kissinger Associates, to handle the Bhopal disaster. So Kissinger's company was helping Union Carbide handle legal matters and talks related to the tragedy. Kissinger recently died. We all know who he was. As the US Secretary of State, he was the biggest warmongering diplomat of all time. It's only natural that someone like Kissinger was hired by Union Carbide for the Bhopal case. We know about JRD Tata lobbying on behalf of Union Carbide and Kissinger thanks to the confidential letter in 1988. The letter came to light in 2014 when Down to Earth published it. Have a look at the letter. JRD Tata sent it to PM Rajiv Gandhi from his Mumbai office on 31st May 1988. The letter was marked strictly personal and confidential. So JRD Tata was acting in a personal capacity. The Tata family then and now have no official role in the case. In the letter, JRD Tata told Rajiv Gandhi to listen to Kissinger's advice and accept an offer from Union Carbide for compensation payment. Tata told Rajiv Gandhi that Union Carbide is ready to pay a generous amount, but only as an out-of-court settlement. The letter doesn't mention any figure. JRD Tata wrote, Dr. Henry Kissinger, a good friend of mine, is, as you may know, consultant and advisor to many governments and large corporations, including Union Carbide in America. He told me of their and his own concern at the long delay in reaching agreement on the amount of the compensation to be paid to the victims of the Bhopal disaster. After pitching Kissinger's proposal regarding the compensation, JRD Tata wrote at the end of the letter, I told Dr. Kissinger that I would confidentially convey his views to you. After the Bhopal tragedy, the entire country should have come together and gone after Union Carbide, the parent company legally responsible for the corporate crime. Instead, we had a top Indian industrialist lobbying on behalf of Union Carbide. What should have been the Indian PM's reaction to this letter? To either inform the press about it or at least ignore it completely. Instead, what did Rajiv Gandhi do? 2 weeks after receiving that letter, the PM wrote back to JRD Tata on 14th June 1988. He wrote, the suggestion will be given consideration. Next year, in February 1989, the Supreme Court ordered a settlement. Criminal and civil proceedings against UCIL were dropped. It was told to pay a full and final compensation of $470 million. That was far less than the original claim of $3.3 billion made by the Indian government. Don't forget here that the same Rajiv Gandhi had also allowed Warren Anderson to escape the country. So, number one, all the corporate players involved in the Bhopal tragedy are busy passing the buck. Union Carbide, Dow Chemical, and Eveready. They all got away with a low compensation for such a gigantic crime. Low level convicts were released and high profile foreign culprits were allowed to walk free. Number 2, we saw the country's top industrialist lobbying with the PM on behalf of the foreign company, and the PM played along. Now, in all these aspects about the Bhopal gas disaster, the larger picture is getting lost. It is the role of pesticides in the lives of Indians. Ever since the country's farming sector was disrupted using the Green Revolution, pesticides became a dark chapter. Foreign pesticide companies now have a firm grip on Indian agriculture. Companies like Bayer, Syngenta, BASF produce and sell plenty of pesticides here. As Indian farmers moved from natural farming to chemical farming, rural miseries went up. Pesticides pushed up the cost and complexity of farming. We continuously have farmer suicides because they are unable to repay loans. Also, pesticides are suspected to be one of the main causes of a cancer outbreak here. Many of you have heard about the cancer train in Punjab. It's a daily train service from Punjab's Bhatinda to Bikaner in Rajasthan. 60% of the train's passengers are cancer patients going for treatment. Excess pesticide use is seen as the leading cause of an explosion of cancer cases in Punjab. So, when the pesticide factory in Bhopal leaked toxic gas and killed thousands of people, it was time to draw the line. The country should have banned the use of pesticides. Bharat already had enough miseries from pesticides, but no one was noticing. Bhopal served as a wake up call, but nobody cared. How many more deaths need to happen before we Indians take a stand? A stand against foreign companies playing toxic games on our soil. How many more Bhopals should happen? How many more cancer trains should be launched? When you will sit with popcorn to watch a new web series on the Bhopal gas tragedy, don't just treat it as entertainment. Watch it and think about what I said. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon so that you get notified whenever we publish a report. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Send get updates to 98210 for news and analysis you are not told. Visit our website empirediaries.com for in-depth reports and columns. Stay informed, stay awake, and think critically.